This is the brief on AI Decoded. Think of this weekly show as your very own universal translator, taking all that intimidating tech speak and turning it into practical, everyday language for folks without a technical background. First, we need to look at who this is actually for, because their core mission is to make artificial intelligence finally click for non-technical users. Since we aren't all programmers, the show acts as a strict filter for information, which really makes you wonder, if AI systems are so profoundly complex, how accessible can they genuinely be for an absolute beginner? Well, second, we see how the two hosts answer that by aggressively filtering the noise, separating what's actually useful.
You know that shared, deeply exhausting reality we just we all just face it every single day.
Oh, absolutely.
Millions of us, right? We type a question into Google and we just resign ourselves to the process. You spend the next 20 minutes clicking through tabs, skimming, 5 different articles, dodging all those pop-up ads.
Yeah, the endless ads.
And desperately trying to piece together a coherent answer from sources that were clearly written for, someone else's specific situation entirely.
It's exhausting just thinking about it.
Right.
Well,
Well, we've compiled a stack of materials for today's deep dive. We're looking at research papers from Anthropic, some really fascinating user case studies, and these deep dive productivity blogs. And they're all focused on this highly capable AI assistant named Claude.
mm-hmm.
And our mission for you today is simple, but it's kind of radical.
Yeah.
We want to help you understand how shifting your mindset from searching for information to actually collaborating with an AI can fundamentally transform the way you tackle everyday tasks.
Yeah, it really is a complete paradigm shift.
But before we get to the solution, let's unpack the problem a bit. I mean, why have we collectively accepted that being informed means doing all the assembly work ourselves? It feels like we've completely normalized this chronic search fatigue.
We tolerate it because, well, for the last 25 years or so, it was the only game in town.
Right.
It became the modern definition of a scavenger hunt. But the core issue here is that the traditional model places the entire cognitive load squarely on your shoulders.
Yeah, completely on you.
Exactly. To understand the shift that Claude represents, we really have to look at the fundamental distinction between a legacy tool and a modern large language model.
Okay, break that down for us.
Sure. So Google is a retrieval engine. It takes your keywords, scans its massive index of the web, and it basically hands you a ranked list of pages its algorithm believes, might contain your answer.
Right, it just gives you the links.
Exactly. The actual cognitive work of synthesizing that information, contextualizing it to your life, and figuring out which parts apply to your specific problem, well, that is entirely yours to do alone.
So it's kind of like going to a librarian asking a really complex question and they just drop a massive encyclopedia set on your desk and walk away.
Yes.
They found the materials, sure, but they didn't actually answer the question for you.
That is the perfect illustration. Google finds, Claude thinks.
Google finds, Claude thinks. I like that.
That distinction is really the bedrock of what we're exploring today. Claude is not retrieving a list of pages for you to read. Actually, it doesn't even browse the live internet by default.
Oh, wait, really?
Yeah, not by default. Instead, it generates a highly customized response that is shaped directly by your specific constraints. Let's look at a scenario from the case studies we reviewed. The broken water heater.
Oh, yeah, this was a good one.
Right. So imagine your apartment's water heater has been breaking for 2 weeks.
A nightmare.
Total nightmare. And your landlord has completely ignored your texts. So you need to write a formal email. You are incredibly frustrated, obviously, but you also need to be firm without completely torching the relationship with the person who holds your lease.
Right, because if I try to Google that exact problem, I'm just landing on some SEO-optimized legal blog from 2018 offering these generic templates that sound like a robot wrote them.
Exactly. And that blog post doesn't know your landlord. It doesn't know the history of your text or your preferred tone.
No, of course not.
But if you type that exact scenario into Claude, just using plain conversational language, detailing your frustration, the timeline, the need to preserve the relationship, and the specific outcome you want, it builds a customized draft.
Wow.
It literally thinks through the emotional and logistical boundaries you established and writes the actual message, balancing that firmness and diplomacy.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting to me because I'm picturing this shift visually.
Okay, let's hear it.
using a traditional search engine is like going to a hardware store and having an employee just point you to the lumber aisle. Like, there's the wood, man. Good luck building your cabinet.
Yeah, exactly. Good luck.
But using Claude is like having a master carpenter right there in your garage, looking at your specific space and helping you build the custom cabinet from scratch.
That's a great way to think about it.
Right. But wait, let me avoid just cheering that on blindly. What does this carpenter actually do beyond, writing emails? Because ideas and language are massive categories. What are the practical superpowers here?
Well, the capabilities extend far beyond drafting emails. It acts as a universal translator for professional jargon, for one.
Oh, interesting. How so?
So, if someone hands you a dense 20-page legal report or a highly technical academic paper, you can literally feed it to Claude and ask for an executive summary of the key points, tailored to a high school reading level.
Okay, that's huge.
It is. It's also an exceptional partner for decision-making. Now, it will not make the final choice for you.
Yeah, you're still in charge.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it will analyze your options, highlight hidden considerations, and map out the trade-offs so you can view a complex problem with complete clarity.
That makes total sense for processing inbound information. But I want to talk about creating outbound work. I was reading about a freelance consultant recently, a guy named Marcus from the case studies.
Oh, yes, Marcus.
This really stuck with me. He was spending almost 90 minutes every single Monday morning just writing status updates for 3 different clients.
The context switching tax.
It's
It's brutal.
Yeah.
Each of those clients likely needed a different format, a different tone, and a different level of technical granularity. I mean, it is pure, exhausting, busy work.
So he started briefing Claude with just the raw bullet points, what happened last week, what the blockers were, what's happening next. And within 2 weeks, that 90-minute Monday chore dropped to 15 minutes.
Incredible.
And the updates were actually more consistent. Now, I easily grasp how it saves Marcus time on rote structural updates. That's essentially just formatting data.
Right.
But in those same case studies, there's an entirely different example. A small business owner named Diana.
Ah, yes. Her experience with the supplier negotiation.
Yes. This blew my mind. She had been avoiding a dreaded conversation with a long-term supplier about their unsustainable price increases. Like 3 months of pure avoidance.
Which is so common.
Very common. She finally went to Claude, told it the history of the relationship, the power dynamics, her fears about the supplier walking away and what she needed to achieve. And Claude walked her through the dynamics, suggested 3 different approaches with varying risk profiles, and helped her script out the hardest parts of the conversation. I have to push back here, though.
Go ahead.
Wait, so she's using a text generator for emotional intelligence. Is a machine really capable of navigating human nuance like that?
That reaction is incredibly common. And it highlights one of the biggest conceptual hurdles we face with this technology.
Yeah, because it feels wrong, almost.
We naturally assume that because an AI does not possess a central nervous system and doesn't feel emotions, it cannot possibly understand them.
Right.
But we have to look at how Claude was trained. It ingested a staggering volume of human language literature, negotiation manuals, conflict resolution transcripts, psychological texts.
It's just a massive amount of data.
Exactly. So it maps the structural topology of human communication. It calculates that aggressive, accusatory language mathematically correlates with defensiveness, and that validating someone's past reliability builds goodwill before delivering a critique.
Okay, let me unpack this. It isn't feeling the nuance.
No, not at all.
It's essentially a massive pattern recognition engine for human behavior. It recognizes the shape of a successful negotiation based on millions of past examples.
That captures the mechanism perfectly. It applies that mathematical understanding of human interaction to the very specific constraints Diana provided in her prompt.
That is fascinating. But, it also sounds almost infallible, which makes me a little suspicious.
It definitely isn't infallible.
Right, because if it can navigate complex emotional disputes and synthesize dense legal texts, there has to be a catch. What happens when I rely on it for something high stakes?
Yeah.
How do I know it isn't accidentally rewriting a clause in a contract and getting me sued?
That is a critical question. Understanding its blind spots is non-negotiable if you want to use it safely. First, as we touched on earlier, Claude is not a real-time search engine. It has a training cutoff date.
So if I ask it to analyze yesterday's stock market crash, what happens?
It will either tell you it doesn't have access to that information, or worse, it might confidently discuss a completely different market crash from 3 years ago.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, you simply cannot rely on it for live data, today's weather, breaking news, or highly localized recent events.
That's a clear boundary. No live data. What about the accuracy of the historical data it does have?
That brings us to the phenomenon of hallucinations. AI models can and do make mistakes. This happens most frequently when you ask for highly precise numbers, niche factual claims, or obscure data points. The real danger is that the system presents this false information with absolute, unwavering confidence.
I need to understand the why here. If it's this incredibly smart tool, why is it making things up and lying to me with a straight face?
Because it is fundamentally a predictive text engine, not a database.
Okay.
It does not store discrete facts in a file cabinet the way Wikipedia does. When you ask it a question, it is calculating the statistical probability of the next most logical word in a sequence.
So it's just predicting the next word.
Basically, yes.
Yeah.
If you ask it for a highly specific, obscure fact that it barely encountered in its training data, its core programming still compels it to generate a plausible-sounding string of words.
Huh.
It is guessing based on statistical likelihood, which means it can invent a highly plausible-sounding guess that is entirely fiction.
So it's like that friend who tells you a piece of trivia at a party with so much conviction you just believe them. But it turns out they just confidently guessed based on context clues.
Exactly. We all have that friend.
We do. So how do we protect ourselves from that?
The rule of thumb is fairly straightforward. Lean on Claude heavily for reasoning, writing, brainstorming, and structuring ideas. But verify hard facts.
Verify, verify, verify?
Always. If the stakes are high, like citing a specific legal precedent, relying on a medical statistic, or finalizing a contract, treat Claude's output as a brilliant starting point, but do the manual work to cross-check the facts yourself.
How does Claude compare to the rest of the landscape in this regard? Because you hear about Google's Gemini or ChatGPT all the time. Are they all just confidently hallucinating at the same rate?
Well, Claude differentiates itself in how it handles ambiguity.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Many other AI tools suffer from a failure mode where if you give them a vague prompt, they will just bulldoze forward and generate confident-sounding nonsense just to fill the gap.
Because they just want to give you an answer.
Right. They are optimized to give you an answer no matter what. Claude is designed to be more conversational and cautious. If it doesn't know something, or if your instructions are unclear, it is much more likely to pause and ask you a clarifying question rather than guessing what you meant.
I love that. It feels less like operating a stubborn machine and more like talking to an actual colleague.
It really does.
But, if Claude is this brilliant collaborative intern who writes perfect emails and negotiates for me, why am I hearing that people get incredibly frustrated with it after just a few days? There's this clean slate thing I keep reading about.
The amnesia.
Yeah. What is that?
Every single time you start a new conversation, Claude forgets who you are. The moment you close that chat window, the context is completely gone.
Wait, if it's supposed to be my brilliant collaborator, having it develop amnesia every single morning sounds like a nightmare. Why on earth would they design it to forget me? I don't want to reintroduce myself every day.
Anthropic built it that way deliberately for privacy and security.
Okay, that makes sense.
By wiping the slate clean, they ensure that your sensitive data isn't bleeding over between sessions or being improperly retained in the immediate conversational memory. It protects you from cross-contamination.
I get the security aspect, but
I know. It places a heavy logistical burden on you. You have to communicate effectively every single time you open a new window. Which brings us to the actual art of talking to Claude.
Let's get into the mechanics of that then. How do we actually start using this without wanting to pull our hair out because of the amnesia?
Getting started takes about 60 seconds. You go to claude.ai. You can sign up with an email or a Google account. And there's a robust, fully functional, free tier.
Nice.
Once you log in, you are greeted by a very minimalist interface and a text box. That text box is where you enter your prompt.
And the prompt is just the instruction you give it. But this is where the biggest beginner mistake happens, right? Providing minimal input.
Yes. I mean, minimal inputs absolutely guarantee minimal generic results. Claude cannot read your mind.
We've been trained by Google to use caveman speak. We just type disconnected keywords like recipe chicken quick and hit enter, expecting the algorithm to do the heavy lifting.
Exactly.
But with Claude, if you type recipe chicken quick, it's going to give you a generic, uninspired list. You have to speak in full paragraphs as if you're briefing a highly capable intern who just walked into the room with zero context about your life, your kitchen, or your preferences.
The intern analogy is the exact mindset shift required. Let's look at a concrete comparison. A terrible prompt is typing, "What should I cook?"
Right, because it doesn't know your budget, your pantry, or your allergies.
Exactly. A masterful prompt looks like this. I have chicken, spinach, a lemon, and about 30 minutes. I'm a beginner cook. I'm making dinner for 3 people, and one of them is strictly dairy-free. Provide 3 options and give me a step-by-step prep list for the one you think is easiest.
The difference is staggering. You give it constraints, a skill level, dietary restrictions, and an exact format for the output.
Right.
Let's do a professional example.
Sure. A bad prompt is, help me with an email to my boss.
Pure caveman speak. It's going to write a robotic, overly formal letter.
But treating it like the intern you would write. Help me write an email to my manager asking to work from home on Fridays. I've been at this job for 2 years, and my recent performance reviews have been excellent. I want to sound professional and appreciative, but not overly formal because we have a pretty direct, friendly relationship.
You gave it the goal, the context, the history, and the tone. So what happens when you hit enter and it gives you a draft that is, well, maybe okay, but a little too stiff? What if the intern didn't quite nail it on the first try?
This introduces the magic of iteration. Claude is not a vending machine.
Okay.
You do not put a quarter in, get a candy bar, and walk away.
Eh.
Within that single chat session, it remembers everything you've just discussed. So if the email draft is too formal, you don't start over from scratch.
You just tell it to fix it.
Exactly. You simply reply to it, this is a great structure, but can you make the opening warmer? Or, actually, let's pivot. Let's try a version where I propose a 1-month trial.
You literally just talk to it, adjusting the dials until it's perfect. The people who get the most out of this technology view the first response as the opening move in a collaboration, not a final deliverable.
Yes, they treat it as a drafting partner.
Okay, so let's say we've mastered briefing the intern. We know how to give it context. But as you integrate this into your daily routine, 2 massive new barriers emerge. One is logistical, the fatigue of typing out that context every single day because of the amnesia.
Right.
But the other barrier surprised me. It's actually emotional. People feel guilty.
The psychological hurdle of offloading your work, it's very real.
Yes. It really challenges our ego. We tie so much of our professional self-worth to the painful grind of doing things the hard way, staring at a blank page, agonizing over sentence structure, grinding through a dense 20-page report with a highlighter. When you suddenly accomplish that same task easily, in 15 seconds, it feels illegitimate. It feels like cheating.
This happens every time a major technological paradigm shifts. Think about the calculator.
Okay.
Using a calculator for complex long division doesn't devalue your core understanding of mathematical concepts. It simply accelerates the execution so you can focus on higher-level problem solving.
Or spell check. Me using spell check doesn't make me a worse writer than someone who manually flips through a physical Merriam-Webster dictionary for every single word.
Exactly.
I'm still writing the story. I'm just outsourcing the tedious mechanics.
These tools extend human capability. Claude is just a significantly more advanced tool applied to a much broader category of cognitive tasks. The work still belongs to you.
Right.
You are still the one setting the goals, providing the constraints, and making the final decisions. You are simply operating at a higher level of abstraction, directing the work rather than grinding through the raw assembly.
Okay, reframing it from cheating to directing definitely helps with the emotional guilt. But what about the logistical fatigue? If I'm a real estate agent, I do not want to explain my entire business philosophy, my target market, and my preferred tone to Claude every single morning just because it's memory wiped overnight.
And you don't have to anymore, thanks to a feature called Projects.
Oh, okay.
Projects are the ultimate solution to Claude's daily amnesia, and they are the bridge that transforms the tool from a neat party trick into an indispensable long-term workflow engine.
Walk me through how a project actually functions.
Think of a project as a persistent, dedicated workspace within your Claude account. You create it once, and you establish standing instructions.
Like rules for that space.
Exactly. You explicitly define who you are, what you do, and how you want the AI to behave within this specific space.
Apply that to the real estate agent scenario for us.
Okay, so you set up a project called Client Communications. In the instructions you write, I am a realtor in Phoenix. I exclusively work with first-time homebuyers. My tone is always warm, accessible, reassuring, and completely free of industry jargon.
Okay.
From then on, every single time you open a new conversation inside that specific project, Claude automatically inherits that context in the background. It already knows you.
Oh, that is a massive game changer. It's like having a dedicated employee who actually memorized the employee handbook on day one.
And you can supercharge it by uploading your own documents directly into the project's knowledge base.
Wait, really?
Yeah. A freelance graphic designer, for instance, could create a project and upload their PDF pricing structures, their standard client onboarding questionnaires, and a document outlining their design philosophy.
I can see this being incredible for students, too. A college student could set up a project for a specific class, upload the professor's syllabus, the grading rubric, and the reading materials for the week.
Or a small business owner who manages multiple departments. They could have one project tuned specifically for customer service with the entire company FAQ and return policy uploaded.
Oh, wow.
They could have another project tuned for internal operations loaded with standard operating procedures. When you ask a question within that project, Claude references your uploaded documents to formulate its answer.
So it evolves from being a generic, out-of-the-box assistant into a highly specialized partner trained on your exact data, living in a persistent workspace.
Exactly. It creates a genuine long-term working relationship without sacrificing the privacy boundaries of the core system.
We have covered a massive amount of ground today, from the mechanics of pattern recognition to the daily workflows. Let's synthesize this. If there is one core takeaway from all the case studies and research we unpacked, it is this. Claude is a thinking partner, not a search engine.
Here.
You cannot use it like Google. The quality of what you get out of it is directly, inextricably tied to the specific real-world context you put into it. You have to treat it like a brilliant, capable colleague.
Which requires a willingness to have an actual conversation. Discard the minimal commands, provide constraints, explain the background, and continuously iterate on its responses until the output aligns with your vision.
So here is our call to action for you. Listening right now, go to claude.ai, create a free account. And I want you to bring a real problem to it, not a trick, not a trivia test to see if you can make it hallucinate.
Yeah, try something real.
Bring something you genuinely need help with today. An email you've been putting off, a strategic decision you are stuck on, or a difficult conversation you need to plan. Write it out with all the messy, nuanced context of your actual life, and just start that first real conversation.
Experiencing that initial tailored response is truly the fastest path to understanding the paradigm shift we've explored today.
But before we go, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over, something that builds on Diana, the small business owner who used Claude to prepare for that daunting supplier negotiation.
That was a great example.
She used the AI to untangle the emotional nuances, map the power dynamics, and explore the scary trade-offs of a difficult conversation long before she actually picked up the phone. So here's the question. If an AI can give you a safe, objective space to practice and refine your approach to conflict, how might collaborating with a tool like this permanently change your own emotional intelligence and conflict resolution skills when you finally step away from the keyboard?
The implication there is profound. It's not just a tool doing the work for you. It might actually be a mirror, coaching you to become a more effective communicator in your own right.
Because at the end of the day, you're no longer just standing alone in the lumber aisle, staring at a pile of wood, wondering where to start. You've got the master carpenter right there with you, showing you exactly how the pieces fit together. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.
Thank you for listening.
This is The Brief on the AI Decoded podcast. AI Decoded is a weekly show that provides actionable tech advice, and today we are looking at their broadcasting footprint and upcoming programming. You know, keeping up with AI tools feels kind of like navigating this dense, totally unpredictable jungle, which is exactly why finding a reliable guide is absolutely crucial. First, where do you find that guide? Well, listeners can expect a new episode every single week, accessible across all major platforms, including Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. So why